Okay, so first off, I figured I'd tell you my story with Doom. As you know, I didn't have a modern console until I was 15. That being my Switch my mom got me after she divorced my dad. And I put thousands of hours into this thing. However, when you game as much as I did, new games were kind of needed at some point, otherwise you'd go bananas. And new games were extremely expensive to teenage me, so I just bought these gift cards from Walmart, generally $20 gift cards, and that allowed me to buy stuff on the eShop. I bought a lot of really old games and got into Devil May Cry this way, and I bought Doom on a complete whim because it was cheap and it looked cool. I mean, this cover just says it all. I also bought Doom 2, and well, it was money that was well spent. The only thing that disappointed me was the severe lack of a story. I mean, with just some text boxes, every, I would say, 2 levels or level transitions kill you. But other than that, everything else is stellar. The music, the violence, the gore, not to mention the weapons. I mean, you should have seen my face when I got the chainsaw. And keep in mind, the only thing I knew about Doom before this was a 2005 movie I watched with my mom a few years back. And the 2016 remake was the last Switch game I fully beat. Heck, I'm pretty sure it's the last Switch game I played. Now I have a computer and access to a bunch of games, and program my own games. And yes, Doom is among these games that I play often. So let's dive into what makes this game so amazing, the history behind it, and yes, I'm going to be spending a lot of this time gushing about how cool this game is. Let's get started. Last time we talked about Wolfenstein 3D, which released in May of 1992. Most of the id Software worked on the sequel, Spear of Destiny. But since this game used the exact same engine as the original Wolfenstein, lead programmer John Carmack used this time to develop his next generation graphics engine, which, with significant effort, choosing to isolate himself from the rest of the crew for a long period of time in order to avoid distractions. He implemented various new features, including light levels, textured mapped floors, and ceilings. He even added support for sloping floors, which is really cool, although this feature was later abandoned, and the engine was not initially developed with Doom in mind. In fact, Doom isn't even the first game to make use of it. Apparently there's a game called Shadowcaster, which used it. I gotta look around and see if I can find that game, because that would be cool to show, this being the first game that used the Doom engine. After the release of Spear of Destiny in 1992, that being September, man, that game was made fast. Development began in earnest. The initial idea was to make a game based on Aliens, which was the team's favorite science fiction action films. And after talking with 20th Century Fox, they basically said screw it because they weren't going to have enough creative freedom. However, John Carmack instead conceived the basic theme for the game: demons versus technology. Doom was imagined as a cross between Aliens, Evil Dead 2, and their last Dungeons & Dragons campaign, which is just pretty awesome. However, one team member did not exactly like this direction. Creative director Tom Hall had instead wanted to continue the Commander Keen series, a game we also need to cover someday. It's what got id started. And they wanted to have a third trilogy of these games. But pretty much everyone else said, we have this amazing 3D engine and you want to make a cartoon shooter? Yeah, no thanks. He accepted defeat and set out to create the new game's design document, which he titled The Doom Bible, while the others were programming and creating the graphics. Something I thought I would mention before we went too much further is that id, or Ideas from the Deep, got themselves a new office building right before they started developing Doom. That building they called Suite 666. Now, for the absolute idiots or uneducated watching this video, or those who just never knew about religion, 666 is the Christian symbol for the mark of the beast or the devil. In other words, it was a fitting name for the place that would develop Doom. It was also developed right next to a dentist office. So yeah, that was also a big inspiration. Remember that next time you go to your dentist. Also, the original working title for the game, Doom, was originally Green and Pissed. But thanks to this movie clipped right here, from the movie The Color of Money, Doom got its current name. Roll clip.
Shit. Good game.
What you got in there?
In here? Doom.
Unlike Wolfenstein 3D, Tom Hall wanted Doom to have an elaborate story. I would argue that Wolfenstein's greatest weakness was its lack of a story, honestly. The game was to take place on an alien planet called Tia de Tanga, on which the UAAF, United Aerospace Armed Forces, had 2 military research bases. There will be 5 playable characters with different personalities and abilities. Now, I'm probably about to botch all these names, so forgive me, but Leroy Chin, John Petro, Peter Varco, Dimitri Primero, T. Burt, and Buddy Ducate. The game would start with creatures from hell suddenly bursting in while the 5 were playing a card game. There will be a total of 6 episodes with storylines involving traveling to hell and back through the gates which the Hellspawn used, and the destruction of Tia de Tanga, for which the players would be sent to jail at the end of the game. Sounds like a sucky ending, but other than that, pretty good so far. John Carmack disapproved of the detailed plot, and from my game design perspective, there's no bad way of doing game design, but from my, personal game design creed, he said, a story in a game is like the story in a porn movie. It's expected to be there, but it's not that important. See, me and Tom Hall probably would have got along great, especially if we worked on the same game design team, because he wanted story. Me and Mr. John Carmack, we wouldn't be able to get jack crap done because we were too busy arguing about story. Honestly, I think it's probably the only stupid thing John Carmack has said that I can think of. Anyway, they argued for a while, but the creative conflict ended when the others agreeing that Hall's levels emphasized realism at the cost of making the gameplay entertaining. So basically like, yeah, your levels look cool, but they suck to play, is basically what they told him. The creative differences kept going until Hall was forced to resign in the summer of 1993. Don't worry though, Mr. Tom Hall did not have a bad ending to his story. Not long after, he got a job at Apogee and 3D Realms, working on games Rise of the Triad and Terminal Velocity. And not all the Doom Bible was scrapped. For example, Tia de Tanga was replaced with Phobos and Deimos, the moons of Mars. Several of the locations, items, and monsters mentioned in Doom Bible appear, though they are modified. And sometimes in later games, such as the Unmaker in Doom 64 and the Monorail in Doom 3, also originally came from the Doom Bible. Now after Tom Hall resigned, John Romero began creating levels that were more abstract. And he made most of the levels in the episode Knee Deep in the Dead. However, he was pretty occupied with other tasks such as programming, so after Tom Hall got resigned / fired, they needed a new level designer. Enter Sandy Peterson, who was hired about 10 weeks before release. In those 10 weeks, Peterson completed all of the second and third episodes, and one level for the first episode. He even modified some of Tom Hall's levels and made them actually cool. thing is, Peterson paid less attention to the aesthetics and more to how fun they were to play, which can be a good or bad thing depending on how you go about it. Adrian Carmack and Clevin Cloud were the chief artists behind Doom. They did hire some help here and there, but it was mostly them. Most of the sprites were drawn by hand, but some of the characters were digitized from sculptures. These were the player character, Cyberdemon, and the Baron of Hell, all done in clay by Adrian Carmack. And the Archvile, Mancubus, Spider Mastermind, and Revenant were created in latex and metal by Greg Pachuchis, I think's the guy's name? I can't pronounce it for nothing. The sculptures were photographed from 4 to 8 different angles so they could be rotated realistically in-game. And finally touched up with color and animation digitally, with a program created by John Carmack called the Fuzzy Pamper Palette Shop. The shotgun and pistol, as seen in the game, were photographs of toy weapons bought from Toys R Us, and the chainsaw is a McLeod Eagle Beaver, borrowed from Tom Hall's girlfriend back before he got fired. The hands seen in the weapons are the brass-knuckled fists, or Kevin Cloud's. Textures were both painted and created from scanned pictures. Along with the most unusual sources, one of the textures was based on Adrian's snakeskin boots, and the bloody texture from the Hellish levels was created from a photograph of a wound on Cloud's knee. Talk about dedication! Now, long before Mick Gordon ever showed up, Doom music was handled by Bobby Prince, who had previously scored Wolfenstein 3D and had worked on the Commander King games. John Romero gave him a bunch of heavy metal records and told him to create something similar for Doom. As the design of the game progressed, it was realized the style would not be appropriate for all the levels, so Prince created some ambient tracks. The music tracks were finally assigned to their additional individual levels by Romero. Most of the tracks, and I would say a good chunk of them, are actually covers of famous heavy metal bands. Although the covers were done without permission, none of the bands have attempted to bring legal action against id Software. According to Romero, Prince, who had previously been a lawyer, knew the legal amount of sampling he could do without getting into trouble. In addition to heavy metal tracks, several of the songs were inspired by the activities of the id Software team. I find it funny that the track Deep in the Code, which is E3M3 of Doom, the track for this level right here, is making a poke at Carmack's habit of programming for long periods without leaving the computer, completely oblivious to his surroundings. Seems like me and him have a few things in common. And when we talk about Doom 2, I'll tell you about the tracks that were in that game inspired by Romero. I'd like to point out that I absolutely love Bobby Prince's work here. Doom has an amazing soundtrack. I think Mick Gordon outdid him in the 2016 remake, but overall, it's a good game overall, good soundtrack. My personal favorite tracks, I'd have to say, are E1M1, E1M2, the Imp song. I mean, those Imps are just jamming it out. Deep in the Code's another good one I like. And I'd say those are probably my top 3. Anyway, let's get to see how the game itself plays. We're looking at the Steam PC port first. So, when you load up Doom, you're dropped into the game with zilch. No text boxes, no tutorials, just your pistol and your fist. And a whole lot of demonic enemies that want to eat you for breakfast. The thing is, there is no text box or in-game tutorials. Players are expected to read the manual to understand the game's mechanics. Or just wing it like I did back when I first played it. I did pretty okay. Doom's divided into 4 episodes, much like Wolfenstein 3D. However, only the first 3 episodes are part of the original release. There was a bonus. Think of it kind of like a DLC or bonus episode for the Ultimate release, but we'll dive into that later. For now, let's focus on the main game. Episode 1 is Knee Deep in the Dead. Think of it as a demo of sorts. It consists of the first 9 levels that provided a decent experience. It's the one I played the most since I picked up the game on Switch a few years back. I'll admit I rarely played the game all the way through. Most times I just pick an episode and go through until I'm bored. Knee Deep in the Dead is definitely the easiest and has the smoothest difficulty curve. Most enemies are introduced just when you have the weapons to handle them. So let's get into the enemies. As a newer game designer, I have classified the enemies into 3 enemy types from my experience. First, there are the melee enemies. These are the close quarters fighters. They include Pinkies, Phantoms, and Lost Souls. They're best handled with a shotgun. And the reason I don't have Phantom sprites here is simply because Phantoms are invisible. Hit scan enemies. Meet the shotgun guys. And, don't know what the other variant is. I'm just gonna call them shotgun guys. These pesky idiots can hit you from far off, as long as you're in their line of sight. These are the guys that rely on the hit scan that we talked about in Wolfenstein 3D. Something tells me they were probably the first enemies designed for the game for this reason. And let me tell you, they need to be your top priority. Simply put, they can't miss. So if you see them, shoot him. Then there's the last category, the projectile enemies. And the easiest to deal with in my opinion. They include the cacodemons and imps, and pretty much all of the boss enemies. All they really do is hurl fireballs or projectiles at you. A chain gun for the cacodemons, a shotgun for the imps, a rocket launcher for the cyber demon, and the big blanking gun for the spider mastermind. In the first episode, you get on that much. It's easily the most boring of the episodes to me. Just the aesthetics, it's just boring. Don't much to say about it. However, episode 3, this one is freaking awesome. It's easily my second most played episode. I mean, you're in literal hell. Now this episode has one major problem. You don't carry your weapons over from the previous episodes, so when you boot up episode 3, you're stuck in hell with a pistol in your fist. It seems like a recipe for disaster, but there is a way around this. Just enter this cheat code and you'll get every weapon in the game. Now, let's go kill some demons! And now we get to the last episode I gotta talk about. Episode 4, Thy Flesh Consumed. So, brief history on this one. Doom, as you already know, was released as a shareware title. You couldn't actually buy it in stores. You had to purchase it through mail orders from id. And yes, you could get the first episode for free online. However, it was eventually released in stores on April 30th, 1995. And as a bonus, this episode, Thy Flesh Consumed, was included. And well, it was also offered as a free patch for those that have bought the other episodes. I don't really like this episode much. It is stupidly hard. It's like they had a difficulty dial. Instead of turning it up to just 11, they turned it up to 211. It is just confusing mazes, tons of enemies. Even on the lowest difficulty setting, it's a real pain. However, there is one cool thing about it. It's that all of the levels and even the name of the episode itself come from Bible verses. Here, I'll read them off to you. First, we got the name itself, Thy Flesh Consumed. It's from Proverbs chapter 5, verse 11. And thou mourn at the last, when thy flesh and thy body are consumed. That is honestly pretty cool. E4M1, Hell Beneath, Proverbs 15, verse 24. The way of life is above to the wise, that he may depart from hell beneath. E4M2, Perfect Hatred, Psalms 139, verse 22. I hate them with perfect hatred. I count them as mine enemies. You know, that describes the Doom guy perfectly. E4M3, Sever the Wicked. Matthew, chapter 13, verse 49. So shall it be, at the end of the world, the angels come forth and sever the wicked from among the just. E4M4, Unruly Evil. James, chapter 3, verse 8. But the tongue no man can tame. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. E4M5, They will repent. Luke 16, verse 30. And he said, Nay, Father Abraham, but if one win unto them from the dead, they will repent. E4M6, Against thee wickedly. Psalms 139, verse 20. For they speak against thee wickedly, and thy enemies they take thy name in vain. E4M7, And hell followed. Revelation chapter 6, verse 8. And I looked to them, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death. And hell followed with him, and power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beast of the earth. E4M8, Unto the cruel. Proverbs chapter 5, verse 9. Lest thou give thou honor unto others, and thy years unto the cruel. And all those Christians say that Doom isn't Christian, and that it's a tool of the devil. So all that said, and all this amazing gameplay, how well did Doom sell? Well, true story. Universities began banning Doom multiplayer games as Russia players overwhelmed their systems. And the morning after the release, John Carmack had to release a patch in response to complaints of network condensation, I don't know how to say that, by administrators who still needed to implement Doom specific rules to keep their networks from crashing from the load. In other words, people who ran these networks and internet connections had to make special rules from Doom, for Doom, to keep it from destroying their systems, which is just hilarious. Heck, when the game released, within 30 minutes, 10,000 people attempted to download the game at once, crashing a university's network at one point, which is even funnier. And I even found this
These games are getting really realistic. Next year I might even play in the big Doom tournament. You might wonder what I'm doing here. Well, I'm getting kind of an inside look at some of these new games. I think you'll be amazed at all the new games we're going to show you here this evening. We've got a few key points to remember. First, Windows 95 is the game platform. Whether it's the best performance, the best setup, the best integration, with the toolkits we're putting together, we're going to make sure people are very focused on Windows 95. DOS, it's been impossible to install the games. Hard for the developers, hard for the users, tough support problems, and nowhere near the graphics performance we're getting today with our DirectX APIs. A second key point is that we think the PC really is the entertainment platform for the future. We're going to have the best performance, the way to reach out and do multiplayer games, lots of new peripherals, and the improvements just keep coming. Our commitment is to make the tools, to make the platform better and better.
Yeah.
Don't interrupt me. And a third point is I really want to thank all the third parties who've made this possible. The reaction of the game community has been fantastic. I will be showing you here 75 new games, all of which will be coming out by the end of the year. We really believe that with their help we'll be able to clean up this DOS mess and get everything focused on Windows. And it's our commitment to keep moving ahead and doing that. Well, I better go work on cleaning up this neighborhood here. So I'm off. But don't forget, when you're trying out our haunted house, don't lose your head. See you.
Yes, that was Bill Gates using Doom to promote Windows 95. Heck, Bill Gates apparently considered buying id Software. However, id Software declined, and they also declined making a port for Windows 95. However, they did sell Bill Gates the license to make a port for Windows 95, so that's where the Windows 95 port comes from. I'm sorry, Doom Windows 95 port comes from. I need to get better at this. Anyway, I think that about covers it for Doom. Still learning how to do this. I think I did somewhat decently. Next, we're going to be talking about Doom's various ports. And I'll see you guys then. Check out my Wolfenstein documentary if you haven't yet. Troy Schultz, out.